Hello, everyone. My name is Hope Chavez. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the artistic producer at Long Wharf Theater. And I just want to welcome you all to the inaugural lab at Long Wharf Theater. This is a new program here at Long Wharf Theater, which will happen every second Friday of the month, right at this time at 1 o'clock. So whether you're having lunch or you're just taking a break today, we hope that this is a time that you can count on every month from Long Wharf to just nourish your spirit, to learn some things, to experience art. So our program is actually being funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. We are so grateful to them for making this kind of opportunity possible. Every month, we will have an artist or multiple artists who will be the resident artist for that month to curate this offering. So this month, that is Isaac Bloodworth and Salwa Abdussabur, and they're the curators for today's conversation. They've brought in some other activists and artists here from the New Haven community. So I'm just going to go ahead and welcome them up to the stage and get us started. Hi, friends. I'm so excited that you're here. Yes, thank you for being here. I'm going to let you introduce your incredible panel and get out of your way, and I'll see you at the end.
Awesome sauce. Welcome, everybody. What's really, really good? Happy Black History Month, because every day is a Black day, okay? And we're going to give y'all this today, right? We're going to give you this work today. My name is Salwa Abdussabur. My pronouns are they, them. I am an artist, activist, curator, lover, fighter, community member, and just here to offer some love and facilitation today. And I'm going to throw it over to my homie to introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Isaac Bloodworth. I can go through the list as well. I am an artist, activist, and everything in between. Keep it short for myself. And yeah, I'm here to facilitate a great conversation. And yeah, we would like to bring our panelists on. So if we could do that, that'd be awesome.
Yes. First up, we got Oni. We got Nico. We got Ro in the business, icons, artistic icons in our city. I'm so glad to have you here as we talk about why, how, what is art is lethal to oppression, a conversation where we can finally deep dive. Stop having these topical conversations, you know, at the stakes of these institutions that ask us, hey, can you do X, Y, and Z? But fear that the conversations we have destabilize them. So I'm going to let y'all identify yourselves, your name, your gender pronouns, and I think Isaac had a great way of framing that first question, and you can go ahead and like frame it because I can't like.
So along with your introduction, we would like to ask you, what is your relationship to your community as an artist? So whoever wants to go first, feel free. Any takers? Okay, I'm gonna popcorn on somebody. Oni or Nico. Nico, I saw a hand. I'll
go. What's up, y'all? I'm Nico Wheadon. I use she, her pronouns. Dialing in from the Westville neighborhood. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, and I guess it's hard for me. You know, I used to identify as an artist. I think recently, you know, I've come to terms with the fact that I've like made a choice to invest in artists in different ways that have kind of inhibited my own creativity. So I'm coming to terms with that. But yeah, I think, you know, I show up in the community as a thought partner, a friend, a neighbor first. And so I think, you know, when I look at the group of people that surround me, many of them are artists. And I think that's important. I'm inspired by the ways that they see the world and challenge the world in the way that they kind of, you know, reproduce it in their work. And then, you know, in like a more formal capacity, you know, as a curator, I try and build exhibitions, programming platforms that really center the work of BIPOC artists, especially with the focus on self-identified women artists. So just thinking about how we've been excluded from a canon that continues to just roll on down the hill. As an educator, I'm really interested in professional development. And so thinking about, you know, all the things that we won't ever get taught in any sort of formal academic context, but that are essential to our growth and to our thriving. And then as a writer, you know, just trying to like expand some scholarship around Black art in hopes that like a young person in the future looking back on this moment won't have to like look so hard to find evidence of our brilliance in the world. So that's me, and I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Ro?
Hello, everyone. My name is Ro. Honestly, I respond to any pronouns. Well, not true. I respond to you, but I don't mind any other pronouns. She, her, they, them. Like, if you're really feeling it, the he, him, if you feel like it, I'm impartial. And what is my relationship to my community as an artist? I think a lot about like, oh, what am I doing? What am I providing as a musician or as, somebody who makes music or writes music? But just as an individual, I think about how indebted I am to my community, a community also containing artists. We motivate each other, we encourage each other. And there's so much that my community does for me that makes it possible for me to do what I do, whether it's actual like physical resources, like, oh, hey, I have an extra audio interface. Do you want it? Or whether it be spiritual or emotional. And I think that being an artist, particularly here in New Haven, means being just intimately attached to, I guess, the heartbeat of the city, and being able to, if New Haven is a heart, I think that the role of the artist is the like stethoscope, of like, hey, like, let me project what is happening here so that we can all hear, so that we can maybe not diagnose, but so that we can figure out what's going on from here. So that's my convoluted answer.
Fire. Fire. And last but not least, Oni.
Hey, y'all. Thank you for having me today. My name is Oni, pronouns he, him, his. I think my relationship to the community as an artist, Salwa was the person who taught me that everyone is an artist, everyone has a capacity to create, and it's something I absolutely like lean into and understand and hope for. I think for me, I just strive to give creatives an opportunity for their work to be centered and honored and compensated. I think I really work at I would call it like the ecosystem level. I think primarily in Hartford and increasingly so in New Haven, where the opportunities to value the artists and primarily the artists of color who mainstream culture is based on, and the wealth is being extracted into the hands of people who don't look like the creatives themselves. So I think my relationship is just giving folks a voice and giving folks a structure in order to demand and get access to what they deserve and what is theirs.
Y'all going hard, okay? Y'all going hard with these answers. You get started yet. No, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for everything that y'all have named. I've heard, my role as an artist has shifted in the capacity in which what feels like, is aligning my purpose. I hear artists are the stethoscope. I hear him saying everyone's an artist. All these different things is what we are going to get into today. So first and foremost, I feel like I want to give us some context, because this is an opportunity for us, like I said, to really deep dive into artistry, into art, and how we define it. And some of us have been giving different peeks into how art shows up in them, how they move through that in their work. And so oftentimes we have these conversations that is we are asked as artists, or even with our relationship to art, what is the solution? What is art? How can we resolve art injustice? What does it look like? How is it done? As well as then having this understanding that art is lethal to oppression, that art is a part of the solution, is a part of the healing, and it's lethal to the current systems of inequity that we are facing. With that being said, I feel like I'm going to dance between naming systems and then also really defining what is an artist, but what is that to you? You know what I'm saying?
Cool. So let's open this up. Let's get your thoughts and ideas on it. Because I can speak about what an artist is to me. I feel like an artist is somebody who just creates. I don't know what they're creating, but you create something. And it doesn't have to be for money either. Like, you can create something that will never be seen by the world. So for me, it's just a creator. As an artist is a creator. So I'll leave that there and let y'all talk about that.
Yeah. I've been like grappling with this thing recently, and I'm like in this stage of a bunch of existential questions. So sorry if I don't actually answer any question without just flipping another question back at you. But yeah, you know, I've been thinking a lot about like what the function of art is, and as a result, like what the purpose and role and responsibility of the artist is. And so while I don't necessarily believe that all art is or has to be political, like I do think that it has to recognize its power to start or to advance a conversation, and that artists are like uniquely positioned to do that, right? And so, yeah, that's like a heavy responsibility, especially when so much of the work that needs to be done doesn't actually lie in our community, right? It's like it's somewhere else, and so that's like an odd tension for me that I'm trying to figure out, and how we support artists in doing that work, because it's really hard work. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I really love that point, and I think my life is a series of just existential confusion. So I appreciate that, Nico. So I think, you know, when I think about art, it's very similar. It's, you know, to me, an artist's role should be to help folks understand the past and present, and also help to define the future. I mean, especially now, I think we're living in a time where I don't want to walk into places with a scarcity mindset. And I lean on so many artists to help develop what a liberated future looks like, smells like, tastes like, sounds like. And I think artists are uniquely positioned and have the skill set to put that out into the world as they see fit. And, you know, I tend to hold back any judgment values or values assigned to like good art, bad art, whatever that has to do with it. I think even the opportunity to create should be honored and should be privileged. And I personally think about artists as people who are creating those things that allow me to rethink and reframe the structures and the history and the traditions that I don't even know, or I think I have a little experience with. That's just kind of the art, and the art that I tend to gravitate to, and that gets me really excited.
Another aspect I think that Ro brought up about artistry is like, and you guys all kind of touched upon, is like that connection. Like, I thought it was so beautiful of like that connection between that you build with your community of like, I might need this to be successful in whatever endeavor I'm going into. And Ro was like, yeah, I can just reach out to that person and be like, oh, I got this thing to help you out. Yeah, so I feel like artistry is like that bridge or that connection or that soul link between whatever you're creating in the community as well, and like can link people together. People you probably never thought you would talk to, people who just want to be heard, people, you know, who haven't been seen. So that's something I also think is really beautiful, is like art helps build a community that you can count on as well. I feel like that's another role of art and artistry.
Yeah, I feel like oh, sorry, Salwa, were you gonna say something?
I was gonna like hop in with like a little bit, and also like offer some more like fluidity in the conversation. I have my notes. I'm writing notes here because when I said this was a masterclass, y'all dropping bars. So I'm gonna act like I'm in a lecture right now. Get these notes, okay? But I wanted to, yeah, just uplift. I also put the question in the chat, and I think like what is an artist, what defines an artist, what I hear is like, what is the role, what is his role in society, what gets us activated, which I think is really interesting and cool. Shout out to my messages going off. But for me, and I'm also want to offer like, actually not gonna say anything. I'm gonna actually just offer what defines what defines you as an artist, like how in terms of your identity, and allowing that as well to like drive the conversation. Because I would be really interested in hearing, like, as an artist myself, like this is how I define my artistry, and like how, or just being an artist and what that means to me and how I serve that.
Yeah. That's actually like basically exactly what I was going to try and touch on, which is, you know, I've been trying, so hey, fluidity. I've been trying to like detach things from art because I think it can be an inaccessible concept. Like you look at it as like a block, you know? And so when I think about what art is for me and how it shows up, you know, in my practice, but also in my relationships, it's creativity. And I think that's like a resource that most people have access to in themselves, right? And so I think that feels important because I think so often like art objects are produced in a way that is either, you know, there's some translation and some interpretation that has to happen, and it can produce like anxiety and fear and trauma in people. And so I think detaching it from like objects and making it more about, you know, what it means to be a creative person, what it means to find beauty in the world, which is like increasingly ugly. I think, you know, it allows more people to see themselves as artists, myself included. So I don't know what that is or what that means, but fair.
Another question.
Yeah, see.
Sorry, go Ro.
I think kind of in response to that, and in response to you, Omi, I think that existentialism gets a bad rap. I think it does. So existentialism, as I know it, is like this philosophical, like, it's a way of thinking or whatever that says to fundalism, like, oh, this is a chair. Chairs are for sitting in. Existentialism says this is a chair. There's a light bulb in my ceiling that needs to be changed. What am I going to do with this chair, regardless of what it was manufactured to be? And I feel like that is kind of a question that artists inherently continue to struggle with, of like, okay, how do I take my environment, or how do I take what has been given to me, and how do I use that, and how do I transmute these experiences, transmute these odds into something that is accessible? And it kind of like breaks my heart a little bit that like people think that art has to, first of all, be an object or a physical product, but also that people aren't okay calling themselves artists to begin with, particularly because from an existential point of view, what defines an artist? The artist themselves. I think that like it doesn't really matter what we perceive that art to be. I think that this is kind of a hang-up that Connecticut in particular kind of grapples with, of like, oh, artists are artists if they're paid for their art. Artists are artists if they're known for their art. Artists are artists if they, like, what have you. But to that, I would say not so. Like, you're an artist if you say you are, period. It's not my job to ask you questions about that.
Something I was hearing, and I know Salwa and I kind of talked about this as we were like forming these conversations, is naming those structures. So I feel like some of those things that we're struggling with also are under the guise of capitalism. Like, I feel like back in the day, like if you wanted to, and I'm talking about like pre-colonialism, like if you wanted to create art or create something beautiful or whatever, whether it's a song that you sing to yourself, whether it like, or just a thought, and have that time for yourself, like you could, and like it was fire. And then now with like capitalism, it has to be worth something once you create that something. And like, I feel like that's kind of where we're also dancing around, is like, why it's inaccessible is because art has become an elite thing that like is no longer feeds the soul for everybody, but feeds the soul of a few, because only a few should be able to have it. So just, I guess, something I want to name is like a system at play.
Yeah, and I love that point. And I think something I want to add to that is also the idea of like especially young Black kids are still creating for fun, right? But then it's the systems in place that take that and then monetize that fun into a dance on, you know, in a video game, or into like a TikTok dance, or into all these different things. So we're at a point where we can't even, I mean, especially young people of color can't even create for the sake of creating anymore without the systems in place, inherently seeing their creativity, seeing their artistry, and finding opportunities to monetize it, and really not even giving them credit for it. So I think to your point, you know, like absolutely, this is all a capitalist structure that needs to be dismantled, and it's gotten so nefarious that people can't even have fun for the sake of fun anymore. And I think, and if they do, then someone else will try to find a way to extract some type of, whether it's financial capital or cultural capital or social capital, what have you, from this young person just having fun and doing something that they enjoy doing. So I think that's a really good point, Isaac, and thinking about how the structures at play really, I think, create this like inherent conflict in how and what to create and who can be called a creator and how free you can be in creating.
I also, I'm just talking a lot. I also wanted to add to that point, and something that Nico brought up earlier about like art not always being political, and like that also plays into like, I guess, racism of like Black artists can't also just have fun in creating art without it automatically having to be political. And I remember the experience I had in my puppet arts program where it was me and this white kid, and I guess I was doing something kind of political. I was talking about capitalism in a sense, but like it wasn't really meant to be political. But we created a skit. At the end of the skit, the teacher's like, "You sure you want to do this?" And it was just me and the white guy. Like, it's going to talk about race, and I was like, in my little blacky mind, I was like, it's not talking about race. I'm just creating something like, but like, yeah, there's no freedom to create anymore. It has to be a thing. So, but go ahead.
That's right. Oh. You know, I just want to riff on that for a second, because I'm thinking about all the ways in which like an artist might become known, you know, in the public sphere, and what that does to someone's ability to experiment and to like stay in a creative space. And I'm thinking about artists that are like, you know, like pushing up on their 50s that have been reproducing the exact same work because the system has sanctioned that work. And the system is what's like, you know, allowing them to be able to like monetize and live off of the production of that work. So it's like, how do you preserve the like sanctity around creativity, especially for people of color, so that we can continue to experiment, continue to like learn from our mistakes, continue to have kind of a community of like critique, but also practice, so that we're constantly evolving and getting even more amazing and excellent, and not kind of relying on what the system tells us is good or is, you know, something that should be circulating.
Wow. I just want to say, wow. Wow. Okay, I'm not sitting here writing because I just want to take a moment to absorb like the very real bar that y'all are dropping. We started off talking about like what defines an artist. We talked about, you know, existentialism and how the artist like plays with and actually lives in this area of existentialism. You know, Oni dropped the transmute down. I said, wow, we're gonna have big words, okay, with intention. Awesome words. You know, and then we kind of did this dance with understanding and defining the artist, but then also talking about how these systems hinder the artist, hinder the sacredness. And it's so interesting how from defining the artist, we, you know, and not inevitably, but like we then like shift gears into like, this is how the system is also like hindering these other really intimate and powerful parts of what it means to be an artist. When Nico was bringing up sacredness and how, you know, and Oni brought up viral culture. Wow, did not expect that. Like that is a powerful thing. Thinking about these young people doing their dances and it's finds in a video game and people monetizing, you know, young Black creativity. Like these are very much real things that are presented in our society that we just really need to undo. It's not cute. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to offer an offering to the space as we kind of start to make this dance between the role of the artist and the current systems in place. When me and Isaac were talking about this, we're talking about like all these different ways of like, dang, like, but what is it? What is the crux of this? Like, why? But why? And for me, what defines an artist, or even from what the conversation you're talking about in terms of how I define myself as an artist, is I don't see myself, when I really sat down, it was the first time I said that. I sat down with Isaac and I was like, listen, like, I'm going to keep creating forever. Like I see myself creating at 50. It's not like I'm only creating when I get a grant, or I'm only creating when somebody asks me to what, or XYZ, whatever. It is an innate, beautiful relationship to creativity and creation. For me, that is what being an artist is. When I did an interview with the arts paper, they were like, whoa, a puppeteer and a singer-songwriter poet coming up with a thing. And it's like, I just see Isaac as just a really great genius Black artistic mind. I think that I have so many friends and people in my space who are artists, and yes, they're puppeteers and they're songwriters and they're poets and they're visual artists and they're sculptors and they're all these different things. But what we all have in common is this relationship to existentialism, this relationship to the beautiful interconnection of the human experience of creation. And that for me is what defines an artist, and which is defining themselves and curating an alignment with themselves, which I think we've kind of gotten to a place which y'all have kind of brung up of, yes, the role of the artist is still very much present in our society. And it's also like, these institutions are like, LOL, we only want you in this capacity because if you kind of go off the hinges in this way, this makes me nervous, this makes me uncomfortable, because then I would have to, face the wholeness of this experience. And that's very real. So with all that being said, if anybody wants to respond to that, absolutely go hard.
Something that was also coming up for me just now when we're talking about institutions is I'm also realizing I wanted to create my whole life. Like, I just remember my mom wanted me to be a doctor, and she is a doctor. She's a very successful doctor. That's great. And I remember at some point I was like, yeah, Mom, I'm going to be a puppeteer. And my mom was like looking like, I came all the way from Jamaica for you to be a puppeteer. Like, that's not what this is about. And at the same time, I also think about like, going back to institutions is like, I feel like the institutions also killed to a degree like what it meant to be creative for me. Like, I remember like in high school and like an art teacher telling me like I can't really talk in art class because like I can't connect with the creativity in me to create. And I'm just like, I'm talking so I can like generate ideas, like this is coming out so I could then do whatever I want with it. Or like and also let's talk about the fact that most of my art teachers are white. So like their systems that they were putting onto me as a Black kid to create was like a whole nother level of things. Cause like I think Nico pointed out, like, you have to constantly reproduce the same thing over and over again. Like, there's no newness or whatever it is. But yeah, like, it was the systems of education that also kind of killed my creativity. I remember coming out of college being kind of depressed and like not being able to create art unless it was for a grade, and like something about that was like really kind of sad. So I just wanted to also put that out.
Yeah. That speaks to me, Isaac. I remember actually talking about this like a year ago with you, and I just have this image of your mom being like, "Say what?" But yeah, I think, honestly, like if I look back at my whole career, I've worked in museums for like 10 years, and I don't even like museums, right? But the way that I ended up at a museum was that I was like thirsty for a critical conversation around Black art. And so the Studio Museum in Harlem, like there was no like teaching around Black art in my program at university, but I would find these exhibition catalogs that were produced, by Black curators about Black art that were just like amazing and completely like mind expanding. And so literally I graduated the next day, got in a U-Haul, drove to New York. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like, I'm going to this Mecca to meet the people that produce this content that I'm so thirsty for that I can't find anywhere. Like, I just want to be a part of an engine that produces this, right? And so, yeah, I think it's interesting. And, like, I think all institutions have their issues, but I think there's something unique about, culturally specific institutions, mission-driven institutions, to really kind of become like a hub, not just for the scholarship, but for people and for like the community of people that are interested in that work.
I think Ro wanted to chime in earlier if you wanted to bring that thought back up.
Yeah, I'm thinking about two things. I'm thinking about just like the educational system and how like pervasive it is in the way that it kind of puts rules to art and what it is, and like us as people and who we are and who we should be. I too identify with that. I'm fully Nigerian, you know what I'm saying? Like doctor, lawyer, engineer, Igbo, in fact. Right? So I think that Kedu Mary. I'm waiting for a response from Oni. It's okay, but
Kedu, hey,
well,
Nigeria.
No. So I think that at the end of the day, I think that particularly like children of immigrants or immigrants themselves or ourselves have a very unique responsibility to ourselves. Saying, "Ooh, these questions are so good," coming in to the chat. Can I just switch gears 100%? I'm reading this question that says, what do healthier relationships or partnerships look like with institutions, especially when artists want to do things at bigger scales? Let's go ahead and talk about it. So I think that there is a lot of frustration for me as an artist who works like on an individual level, particularly because it's like, wow, I see all of these murals popping up. I know like the 1 or 2 people who are being contracted for these things. And it's just like, yo, like, how is it that like, how do I get funding, or how do I get like what it is that I need to continue my art when I don't live in like Westville, or when I don't live in like particular neighborhood? No shade. I'm so sorry, no shade. But it's just like, how do I get access to these things when I'm not under the gaze of these places that are like continually like finding money out of nowhere and giving it to people? And I feel like the question that poses is like, what do I have to become in order to be good with these systems that will help me get my art together? I do think though that it's kind of, again, like on the existentialist tip, like just like we as artists are whatever we say that we are, as a community, we have an opportunity and a responsibility to continue like our half of that relationship with institutions. At first I was thinking to myself, like, okay, maybe institutions are here and maybe the conversations that happen in these rooms are so cyclical and money never ends up in the hands of like actual individual artists, because like artists and the community have a strong individual like person to person interaction, such that it may even reduce the relevancy of these institutions. And as I was thinking about it, I was like, you know, maybe, but also it might be possible that these institutions just don't have enough of a connection to these individuals, to the point where institutions are giving money to other institutions that are already like built or that are already existing, like choirs in like West Hartford and Stanford and Greenwich and stuff like that, because of the inherent ethos that these organizations have. And I think that it's hard as an artist to continue to have to think about, okay, what is it that we have to do to build up our personal like ethos while staying true to our own, I guess, artistic ethic? I don't know, yo.
Something that Salwa and I, again, in the background we're talking about is maybe the reason why the relationship is so unhealthy between institutions and the artists, or the community of artists, is because institutions aren't really looking at artists as people, or people worthy of creating and things of that nature. They're just kind of looking at us as a means to an end and a product. They're not really centering art. Is something that we were talking about, is like, there's a difference between like centering art and the creative hub and those things, and versus like just coming in to get what you need and then being out once you get what you got. Because centering art, I feel, would also open up a wider gate for people to like have a mutual transference of money and power and things like that. But if you're just coming in for what you need or what you want, then you're not really actually building that relationship. So in and as well as institutions need to work harder at that. Like they can't just keep monetizing us. They have to actually build a relationship with us. And maybe as artists, we should make it harder. And it's weird because in capitalism, you're like, well, I need that project. So like maybe I need to forego it this one time so I can go do the thing that I got to do. And then I come back and help everybody else out. But at that point, you're already jettisoned so far ahead. So you can't really do that. So, but maybe if we also have a conversation of like artists sticking together in some mutual aid type of fashion, maybe we can build that force of wall so that institutions then have to respect us and respect the community that they're actually trying to pick from. And so that way they're not just picking from the community like little blades of grass, but they're actually picking up the whole damn lawn together and putting it in front of the house. I don't know. That was just a weird metaphor, but that's something I'm thinking of.
Go ahead, Oni. I'll go after you.
No, I agree. I agree completely. I think I was just gonna say for me, it's about centering art, but it's also about, I think there needs to be just a generational transfer of power, because yes, you can center art, but you have to also give up the endowments, right? Or at least put those endowments in the hands of the people to make those decisions. It's participatory budgeting. It's saying that the artist knows best for what they want to build, and some board of trustees and has no right to say what folks can and cannot do. I mean, it's really just reimagining the entire system as it works now, because it has been shown to not be successful. I mean, if it was, we wouldn't be in this position that we're in now. So, I think, yes, it's centering art, but I also think it just power to all the people. And how do we, I think, it's really interesting to have kind of an artist-focused mutual aid organization. And I think just building our own institutions that work for us, by us, and are like economically and creatively sustainable, I think could be so, so powerful.
My God. Okay. My God. First, I want to say, yes, Ro, you do know. I just wanted to uplift that because everything you had said with the ethos, and I said, ooh, wow, dropping bars. And I will certainly be listening back at this panel for real and taking more notes because this is powerful. I think that when Oni kind of took this bars that Ro dropped and then like expanded upon it, what I wanted to like also add into the mix is really uplifting that idea of, I think that what really struck me was when Ro was like, but if this person-to-person interaction with artists and the community and how that makes institutions irrelevant. And I was like, ooh, a world where these institutions are irrelevant, actually. And also wanting to uplift Oni being like, listen, we just need to create our own situation because this is not cute. And I think that uplifting that the system is really ugly, that the system is really oppressive, the system is actually taking people's lives, the system's in place is actually having people die for no reason over product and property, and this concept that we have around capitalism, this conditioning we have about racism, which, we can go into a little bit, or just as much as we need to, because when I was thinking about like, okay, this artist is lethal to oppression relationship, now that we have this definition, now that we have identified these systems, we know that the artist, with this person-to-person interaction, and it's the artist's ability to make these institutions relevant or irrelevant, or certain things in society or the things we talk about or what we see as important or not important, and how artists influence culture, has the potential to make these conditionings not irrelevant, but undone. And that's the part that institutions then fear, because they're like, wait, I have to be accountable? Ooh, I have to be accountable for my actions. I have to see this as a whole person. I have to actually like pay artists what they're worth. Oh, I have to pay people equally. Equity? What is that? Ew.
Can I talk about that just quickly for a second? Because let's talk about the pay thing, for example. I remember I was on live with Tekwa Lakicha, Big Tech. So one thing that we were talking about was we were reminiscing about a show that we did in 2019 or 2018 at like Stella Blues or something. And we had like stayed there for hours and hours. Like one of us performed at like 8, the other one performed at like 9. And we had to stay there till like 1:30 in the morning to get paid $17. Let's talk about this for a second. So a lot of these institutions, especially like within like the performing arts like industry or whatever, a lot of these institutions do take advantage of the fact that like there is so much like pay inequity here, particularly in Connecticut. So Connecticut is it's in like the top 10 wealthiest states in America. It's the second most financially or fiscally disparate, second only to New York City. So I think what that means is that when people are at the top, they're set, they're good for life, for generations. Whereas the people at the bottom who tend to be artists, who tend to be doing art or making art for the sake of, you know, like sustenance and stuff like that, it puts us in a position where we're very easy to be taken advantage of, because like the cost of living is considerably higher than like other places, and we're getting paid less. And I think that sometimes, just what does it look like to be bold and like honestly brave enough to be like, actually, I'm not settling for anything less than I'm worth. I think it's hard and it's scary. And if anybody has like any thoughts on how to empower artists to be able to literally say, actually, no, I'm not doing this performance until I get a guaranteed X amount of dollars. How do we empower people to do that? How do institutions empower people to do that in the face of, frankly, like predatory like venues or predatory like, you know, like people who are like trying to use artists for stuff?
Yo, I definitely. Oh, can
No,
I?
I was gonna. Go for it.
Okay. I think that this very conversation, which was my hope that like the folks in the audience who will watch this back later, will have the opportunity to really dive into and have a resource to have and start to activate these questions in our minds as to like, why do we feel comfortable like underpaying artists? Why don't we prioritize artists? Why don't we center artists? And at some point, I want folks to respond. I also want to like dive in with our like last, 11, 12 minutes about the importance, and also answer some of the questions in the chat. But I think that once again, it's the conditioning. I think that institutions have locked into this intimately violent way of seeing artists in this capitalist way, because oftentimes we are like utilized to uplift their platform or like, make them relevant, and particularly as black artists, oftentimes it's like, well, there have been some institutions I've looked at. I'm like, your page is dry. Like your content is dry. It's whack. And they're desperate for Black artists because they know that we curate not from the way that we define ourselves as artists and how our relationship to our creation, is authentic. It is, I think that particularly for me in my Black experience, I think we are forced to do more work in terms of just like connecting to ourselves and our relevancy to ourselves in the world and all these other things. I feel like that's deep. But with that being said, not prioritizing artists and then on top of that putting Black, like it's like you are a vessel for my like whatever. It's like I feel like I have the words and I'm saying the words, but yeah, I think it's just going to be happening. I think that there is this step that is happening where it's like, oh, we're going to name that like we are taking anti-racist steps. But for me, like you can put a cute little, graphic picture on your website or on your Instagram page all you want. But if you're not doing the work within your, actual administration and what it looks like and the diversity of thought and understanding around like racism and these systems and misogyny and patriarchy and all these different things, homophobia. Can we go into it? You know, using pronouns in the office place, like we're not doing what we need to be doing. And honestly, I think that we should start, I think that somebody brought up before about like, you know, actually just being like, you know, we're actually not going to interact with these institutions anymore. Like, I think that can serve us. And I think also mobilizing, I think that's a really key piece and something that I'm exploring even with me starting the Black Haven platform for Black CT artists is mobilizing and being like, yo, we know each other. And I heard that you was trying to play my homegirl $17 and none of the Black artists in New Haven / Connecticut / the East Coast area will be accepting any gifts from you, period. Okay? Until you get it together. So
Listen.
I was just about to. No.
I just want to add something really small because I think it might help me a bit. I'm learning a lot too, and I think it's like what are institutions anyway, right? Like I struggle with that because I think I feel oftentimes that I'm critiquing them in this kind of like large way that doesn't acknowledge the fact that institutions are really just people in a place, right? And so if the people in that place are not leading from a place of values that are aligned with me, then of course the institution is not going to lead from a place of values that I'm aligned with. And so I think part of it is like acknowledging that institutions are people, engaging those people in non-transactional ways, right? So it's not just about what you want from me and what you're going to pay me for that thing. It's like, how do we build trust as two people that are like looking to explore this thing that we both care about? And so that feels again like a lot of work, and it feels like kind of dialing things back to the very beginning. But it feels like where the work starts for me, right? Which is like, I'm not going to sit out here with the wish that these institutions are going to become more responsive or relevant without like putting in the work to know the people that are driving that work in that direction. So I just offer that because I think it's like, when I think about how to actually make change, right? It's like, I can't start at this umbrella place because it's literally just burn it down. So if I don't want to burn it down, then what am I going to do? I'm going to start with the people, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the conditioning piece as well. So we've been conditioned to follow the rules, to, you know, just kind of keep our heads down and whatnot. I think about the fact that like I went to a whole arts program. I was about to cuss. I went to a whole arts program for college and high school. It still wasn't taught about the whole payment thing. Like I wasn't taught that what I'm doing is worthy or I am worthy as an artist. Like, and like I went into debt for that. So I owe people for them to tell me that I wasn't worthy, which is kind of crazy to think about. And yeah, it always is simplified to like, yeah, it's just the people. We have to connect with the people because yeah, institutions are people. The buildings don't really matter. These are people that self-impose that they're important because they're the gatekeepers to access things. But yeah, we also don't really need them. Like it's at the end of the day, like if we just started talking to one another, like I know I talk to other artists and like I'll ask them. That's the other thing is like we also have to get out of the mindset of like, you know, I can't let this other artist know what's going on so like they can take mine. And I guess Oni kind of named that as like scarcity mindset. Like when we talk to one another, we just have to also make sure like we're dropping information towards one another so to help elevate each other. That way we don't have to go to that institution to be like, how do we do this thing? How do you accept me? But more of like, you know, hey, by the way, this is what I charge, and this is what you should probably be charging because I think you charge them too low. Like, how do we? Yeah,
we are the
one another. Exactly.
As we like inch closer, so I hope that we can still stew on some of the things that you know we've talked about, inch closer to our time. I wanted to answer some questions from the chat because I feel like we definitely, yes, all these things. So one of the questions, how do we create spaces where we are creating for the sake of creating? Very briefly.
If I were to answer, I would say just create that space within yourself. Like, I think that when we think about creating, who are you creating for? What are you creating for? When it comes to, yeah, how do we create spaces where we are creating for the sake of creating? Like, how do you create a space if you're not creating for the sake of creating? I think it's like, yeah, just start there. If you're looking for somebody to give you permission to start creating or to be a creator, My advice would be to consult a mirror. That's who you're getting permission from.
Yeah.
And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Like, you are a creator. Please be affirmed.
I think it's everything you just said, and it's prioritizing that even when it doesn't make sense, for any number of reasons, right? Because people are telling you, like, why are you doing that? Your bank account's telling you, are you sure? Yeah, it's like prioritizing that as a space that you create. Mm-hmm.
Also, you can also like rely on your community as well. Like just have somebody like accountability partner to be like text you on Saturday morning to be like, hey, just make sure you create something for yourself today. Like, and that is it. That's it. It's the simplest form I could think of. Just like make sure you're also talking to your community when you feel like, you're not in a space of creating anymore for yourself. So
absolutely. I would add to that like, as somebody who has like friends who create for the sake of creating, and then also have friends who've created for the sake of creating, and then now are in the industry and have been sucked into like these ideas of like industry life and like all the things, all the weirdness of that. I think just finding your people and just like being clear with that, like being clear and being like, yo, like, let's just create for the sake of creating. Like what has been activating you? Like, just being transparent about like defining how you define your artistry and your creation, and then also like where you want to go with it. And also if you want to like add people into that journey, like period. Like I think just like naming, I think we should even as artists have more of these conversations within ourselves, because I think that there's two things I want to uplift. Yes, one, the kind of concept of getting sucked into this industry mindset of what it means to be an artist. But also there's a lot of artists that I know who refuse to interact with these institutions, who refuse to ascribe. And those are the ones that I often think about when I think about, support and mutual aid and all these things, because there are artists who are like, in my artistry, in my mind, in the way that I move energetically, I refuse to compromise myself and my humanity to interact with these systems, period. And those are the people that I love and draw close to. Last question is, I saw a dope question. It was, as a person who isn't Black, what can I do to amplify Black voices and Black art in a society that pushes against it? Breathe.
I'm not answering that question. I'm just saying goodbye to everybody. This has been dope. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I got to dip, but love y'all.
All right, yeah, please.
Thank you. I don't know if I have an answer for that. Go find Black people, and not in the sense of like saviorism either, but like go actually have authentic relationships with Black people and ask them what they may need. Because sometimes it's money, sometimes it's space, sometimes it's time to like just dish out and see what, the feedback and stuff like that. Just ask. Literally, you have to build an individual relationship with a Black person. I can't answer for all of Black people or brown or marginalized people. You just have to build that relationship with that person and see what they need and ask them.
Right.
I kind of disagree. I agree because yes, build relationships with Black people, but I think that an analogy that I've used to talk about how like an oppressive, no shade, an oppressive majority interacts with an oppressed minority is this. Like, let's take like fat phobia, for example. People who are like plus size will come to you and say like, oh, well, like these are the ways that like the healthcare system is biased against us. We get fewer jobs. We are like this, we're that, da, da, da. And it has nothing to do with our physical health, but everything to do with the society around us. How helpful is it for me, who's built like celery, to be like, oh, well, I love plus size people. Oh, I love, like I think everybody's body is beautiful. How is that helpful? And how does that add to the community? Or how does that add to like a more equitable world? What I would need to do as somebody who has social and like socio-political capital would be to go back to the people who look like me and say, yo, what is happening? Go back to the institutions that favor me and say, what is going on here? It's not my job to let people who are in this oppressive collective, like, hey, like, I need you to know that I'm safe. It's my job to go to the people who do look like me, who align with my experiences, and say to them, outside of the gaze of this oppressed population, to say, yo, why is it that we are allowing this to happen? I think that when it comes down to it, it just comes down to a thing of like, yo, use the capital that you were born with. And that's like, regardless of like, I don't know, I feel like everybody has like some sort of privilege. So everybody has to ask that of themselves. But in this situation, that's a question worth asking. Like, if you know that systems and, you know, like institutions favor whiteness, leverage that whiteness with them instead of dismissing it when addressing us or letting us know that you're like okay with us. I don't know, like
no, you don't. You know,
we agree. We agree.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, this was phenomenal. Last thing I will say, which is in the chat, somebody said Venmo your Black artist friend. Period. Okay, my Venmo is at Salwa_with_love. You can hit my Venmo account. You know, I already dropped that Venmos in the chat. With all that being said, as much as I could talk about this conversation all day, it was all day vibes. We have to close out. But before we close out, you can follow these folks, support their work, keep investing in their artistry. Where can we find you? You know what I'm saying? What's your Venmo? What's your website? Give us your Instagram. How can we support you and what you are up to?
I'm gonna go. So my name is Godwynn, ROGODWYNN. Follow me on Instagram, Godwynn the First. Hit my Venmo at Godwynn Music. Cash App Godwynn Music as well. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Oni, OHHKNEE. I think on all platforms. The big project we're doing right now, we're starting a cooperatively owned digital media platform for Connecticut artists. So they have equity in the platform and in culture that they create. So that's Cafeteria Radio and should be coming out later this year, and really excited for y'all to be a part of it. Ro just got the, yeah, so really excited to be a part of it. Ro, we'll talk.
Salwa?
No, go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say Isaac Bloodworth. Cash App is probably all Isaac Bloodworth. PayPal, Venmo, just keep it in my name. And then my Instagram is Way, WAY_Ward, WARD_17. So you can follow me there.
You can find me. My name is Salwa Abdussabur. You can check me out on Instagram. It's still Sweet Summer Melanin. You can catch me on my website, salwaempowers.com, period. I bought that and everything. And so those are like the main places that you can find me. What I got coming up is, of course, started a Black CT artist platform. We're looking to do a symphony residency this coming year, as well as do other events. And so we focus on our justice for Black artists, particularly in Connecticut. So if you want to know more about that, come through. You know, EP drop at the end of the month, period. And yeah, that's me. With all that being said, you can tune into our next lab on Long Wharf on March 12th at 1 p.m. right here on the YouTube channel. Many thanks again to all of you guys, through Mellon Foundation, for your support on this project. I feel like Hope was supposed to say that, but that is okay. I will also all the people in here in my post on Instagram, so feel free to check it out. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you. You basically said most of the things. I just want to let folks know that when you tune in for future labs, they will all look different, right? So we're trying to focus on civic conversations, amplifying local artists, and developing new plays. So you may come next month and it may feel like a performance, or it may involve both conversation and slam, right? So just know that every single month it'll be a different offering, and the artists that we pay for that month will be curating that offering. So stay tuned. Keep following these folks. This video will live on our YouTube, so you can watch it again and scroll back to where everybody dropped their Venmos and their Insta handles and stuff. So thank you all again. I'm so grateful. Have a beautiful rest of your Friday.